Hello, everyone. Welcome to Interview with the Masters. Today we have Ahmed Aldoori. He's going to be a new instructor for us for next semester. And just wanted to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know we have people from all over the world, so that's awesome. And Ahmed will be teaching fundamentals of character design, so be sure to keep a lookout for that. And you guys can ask questions at any time in the chat box. We'll do our best to get to all of them. I'll be relaying the questions to Ahmed. And that's about it, guys. So please give a warm welcome to Ahmed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Glad to be here. For the character design class at CGMA, etc. And those of you who have any questions or are curious about what's going on, go ahead and leave them in the chat box, and John will help us out here. So thanks, John.
Of course.
But
Cool.
I don't see their the question box anymore.
Did it go away?
I think so. How's everyone doing?
Hold on one second. I think it's on the top left corner. You could see it's like a little red lightning bolt.
Red lightning bolt.
You should be able to click on that.
I got nothing.
Okay. Oh, it's all good.
All right, yeah, if you can, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Med, you could start with maybe how you got started as an artist or your humble beginnings.
Oh, right. Good old stories. I mean, I've kind of talked about this before, but I've always been kind of drawing and interested in art. And I guess it started when I was really young. I was a tiny kid. I was 2 years old. So my mom claims, and she has even drawings that I've done, but they're like these scribbles, but they count, right? But yeah, I was always just drawing Batman and Power Rangers, and I really was obsessed with it. It wasn't like I was trying to learn or anything, but rather like I just, like how kids are. You see something and you want to draw it. So it was like that for a very long time. And because I was obsessive about drawing and just desperate to have paper to draw on, it was a really kind of novelty every time I could draw, because we were kind of not very fortunate in the beginning. And so my dad would sometimes bring home worksheets from work, and on the back I could draw on them. And that was like a gold mine for me. And so, yeah, I would just draw all the time. And as I went to school, I'd be the kid in the class that was drawing instead of taking notes or doing homework. You'd see, action figures and characters all over my paper. And I'm sure most people are already doing that. And it's just the same thing. Just, fast forward 20 years, here I am giving this talk, right? But yeah, I really, I didn't think I'd be working in games or movies, but because I didn't know that it was an industry at the time, I just thought these things kind of happened, right? So as I was graduating high school, I was sort of in a couple art groups online, but I never heard of like concept art or design or character design. But I did see some art by Craig Mullins, and that kind of just shifted everything for me. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know this was possible. And so began my kind of goal to set for myself, and like, that's what I want to do. Well, that goal is much different now, but it was something at the time that helped me have some direction, and I could tell my friends and family like what is possible out there. Although they weren't really convinced at first. They're like, wait, you want to draw for a living for video games? And of course they were still very supportive. They just, as parents are, they have to be wary of things. And so I did try one semester of computer science engineering, and that was awful. I was so miserable and depressed, so I'd skip class and go home and draw. So it was definitely not for me. And then I went to a community college where I lived for just some basic life drawing classes. And all the while, by the way, I really wanted to go to Art Center because that's where Craig Mullins went. And I just knew I couldn't go. There's no way. And so I just didn't even bother applying. And I remember being at the community college, and right outside the art class was this big poster for Art Center. And I was like, oh my God, it's haunting me. But still, it was just a pipe dream. And then then I, took some time to make a portfolio for Columbus College of Art and Design, which is also in Ohio, by the way. I grew up in Ohio. And I went to CCAD for illustration, but I didn't really get to the illustration portion. I was still in the foundations year. And around after the second semester, I decided to take another semester off and build a portfolio for Art Center. And lo and behold, I applied and it worked out. And then I packed up my bags and moved to California, and I met a bunch of cool people. And started school at Art Center for Entertainment Design, and that was in 2009. And what I was learning there was a bunch of very useful stuff for anything really. I mean, the stuff that we learned can be applied to characters, environments, architecture, advertising, graphic design. It's all very foundational thinking, and then it was augmented further because before that I had really dived into oil painting and teaching myself how to oil paint. And that was an endeavor on its own. But I think after, during Art Center, by the way, I was, during the summers, we don't have terms. So I would be working like small jobs here and there. And that built like kind of a client list. And it's crazy how it worked out. I ended up working with Dylan Cole for a little bit. He was the art director for, what's it called? Lord of the Rings at the time. And then now he's doing Avatar 2. But we did this children's book together because he was really good at backgrounds and matte paintings and environments. But when it came to characters, he needed somebody. So that somebody was me. And that book is called The Adventures of Tyler Washburn. It's like a children's book, and it's kind of like a animated style. But that's not really what I want to do. But yeah, so one thing led to another. I ended up working at ArenaNet for Guild Wars 2, and I learned a lot there. That was a really good experience. But I decided to kind of pursue my own thing, and I came back down to Los Angeles, and now I'm here teaching at Art Center College of Design. I'm doing 3 classes there, and then now a class with CGMA, which will be the fundamentals of character design, and you all better sign up because it's going to be awesome.
That's great.
Ta-da. That's my intro.
Yeah. That's great, man.
Thanks, dude.
We have a couple questions already as far as your intro. So starting with Fiona, she's asking how old you were when you got accepted to Art Center.
I remember I was 20 because I remember turning 21 when I was doing my stupid 3D project. I hated that. It was my birthday, and I was here sanding this big old ugly thing, and I was trying to get it done. It was awful. But yeah, I was 20. Yeah.
And any personal experiences with applying to Art Center or other art schools like you were just talking about?
I remember when I was trying to come up with the portfolio, I didn't know what I was doing, and so I just like made art and like printed it out and put it in this packet and just sent it off. But you're supposed to put it in a booklet and like have intro and talk about what it is. Not too many words, but like I don't know. I was still pretty lost in what I wanted to do, so I just kind of did everything that I thought was expected. But if I was to pull up that portfolio, if I could ever find it, it would still. It wouldn't represent what I want to do now. So, but yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say about the applying experience. And, I guess you have to apply and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Same question from Fiona. How was it developing a portfolio? Like, how was that process?
At the time, it was kind of blue sky, meaning there was no guidance. I guess if you were to make a portfolio now, there's a lot more resources out there. And, I was actually thinking about making a YouTube video on, hey, this is what to consider for a portfolio. But for me at the time, it was just, okay, make a fantasy, sci-fi something and get some characters and a story going. And so I just did like a bunch of paintings and like one character design. And if I was to apply right now, with that portfolio, I don't think I'd get in, because there weren't too many people applying back when we were in Art Center. But yeah, I think now it's like if you're going to make a portfolio, depending on what you want to do, I'd say focus on like figuring that out first, and then creating your portfolio for that, and then hit every note. Like if you're going to do character, or if you want to do entertainment design, that kind of thing. There's like the technical skills aspect. So you got to be able to draw and paint and think of designs and solutions. And at the same time, how do you stand out against everyone else who's doing the same exact thing? And that's usually with your story. And is your story just going to be the regular old, typical fantasy armor, art station, like kind of generic kind of stuff? Not that art station's generic, but like there's a lot of people that post there that's just like, or are you going to be clever and like kind of turn all that off and go find your own resources, your own stories, and your own influences, and kind of make something unique? And that's usually what stands out for portfolios.
Awesome. Cool. Well, with that being said, we could transition to some of your artwork that you share.
Oh God, I just kind of compiled a random set of images that I could kind of go through and talk about. And they're all ranging from old during Art Center, and then after during ArenaNet. I have some work from Guild Wars. Let me share my screen.
Awesome.
Let me know if it's visible.
Yes, it's good.
Okay. Okay, yeah, this one. So basically I have a set of paintings, I have some drawings and some just sketches, and I'll go through them, and there's no particular order. I'll just kind of go through them and say what it was. This one was from my graduation show. When I graduated, wait, I need to, I've been looking at this for so long, I just want to fix it now. I hated it. It's like, why did I do that? Okay, now it's fixed. This is for my grad show. I wanted to do the Arabian Nights, and kind of just a bunch of paintings based on some stories. And so in the Arabian Nights, 1001 Nights, there's a lot of magic and thieves and people getting caught, and magic bottles and whatever. And so I had my friend Stephen pose as if he's getting caught stealing. And so if you look at the hands, I think it's probably the part in here that I like the most. And I had him kind of just hold his hands behind his back. But also, I don't know, I was just trying to tell some kind of story. It's not in depth or anything, but it's, these kids getting caught and by some kind of evil, I don't know, maybe she's a thief too. She's a greater thief. And then that's the bodyguard. And in the back, you have like these hanging pots and lanterns, and it's there. But all these elements that tell a story. I think if I did this now, it would be a lot different. Yeah, I don't know. My style, I think, or the styles that I tend to do are, often changing. But moving forward, what else we got? Okay. If those of you who have been following me before, I hosted this kind of challenge on YouTube called the Sketch Fit Challenge, where, and I still got to send out drawings for that, but I was giving away my actual sketchbook, like full original, to a winner. And basically the contest was to do a 3-month 12-week fitness contest, and basically they have to post a video and of themselves saying, hey, I accept the Sketch Fit Challenge, and the winner got the whole sketchbook. And that's what this is right here. Oh, well, it's a piece from it, and the whole sketchbook is available on my Gumroad if you're curious to see it. But yeah, I mean, like when I was drawing these things, I really liked robots and androids and faces and elf girls and whatnot. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. But yeah, this is from an earlier video I did, drawing faces. I think something I'm going to cover in the class for CGMA is basic construction of faces later on, because it's a big thing that we kind of struggle with. But once you understand the construction of a face, it's much easier to do things like drawing them from your imagination, as well as coming up with expressions like you see here on the left. Whether it's going to be raising the eyebrows here or lowering them here, opening the mouth, which requires moving the jaw down. But without the understanding of basic construction in terms of physical anatomy and how to make it look good at the same time, it comes from foundational learning. So let's see. This one, I don't know, it's not what to say. I like this one. This is fun. What I wanted to do is get a shot of like almost a masquerade ballroom thing, and I wanted it to be a composition rather than just a floating character in the middle of nowhere. And so the tricky part for this one, by the way, was being her in shadow but still being the focal point, and I managed to pull it off. But if we look at it in black and white, she's definitely in darkness, and it alternates, so it's dark light, dark light. So that was pretty fun, and it was a personal piece, and most of these are personal pieces. So yeah, this is another personal piece. I think I hope you don't hear those people outside. Anyway,
It's all good.
yeah, so this one I wanted to do some kind of armored character, but at the same time color, like I wanted this contrast of just this purple, magenta blue, almost like this color, and I wanted that to be the bounce light, and something like that. And it has this really cool effect when you zoom out. It almost looks like one of those classic golden age Illustrator color palettes. Not that I've been able to pull those off, but that's kind of what I was going for with that. And I think the size at the time, I was like, I want to make Magic cards for Magic the Gathering. I think that's what the format size of this is. I still haven't done that. Maybe I'll still try. Do some character sketches for a comic that I'm working on with an author. It's kind of like it's nothing too official. It's rather like, hey, I'm an author. Would you like to do this thing? And so far we got some story elements going, and this is the main character. And it's like it's set in a fantasy world, so it's a lot of well, I don't know, armor kind of things, but not. He has to be able to jump around and move around really fast, so I don't want to load him up with too much armor. But yeah, what you can see here, by the way, is a lot of application of simple gesture, and instead of the whole T-pose of a dude, right? And I think even the subtlest gestures that like you see here can really help tell your story. And I'll be covering that actually the first week for the CGMA class. Fundamentals. Are there any questions, by the way?
Yes, there are quite a few.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe we can just jump onto those for a second.
Sounds good. So we'll go from top to down. From Fadhel, how many hours do you practice every day?
Oh God. It's weird because it's like I always tell people to practice, keep drawing, practice. But for me, when I'm doing it, I don't consider it as practice. I'm like, I'm just in it, right? But to answer your question, well, there's like the 2 hours of just flailing around and warm up. Well, maybe just an hour. I actually have an hourglass right next to me, and it's got like grains of sand. And I flip it over. I'm like, okay, while this is going, I know nothing good is going to come of this. And so all my drawings really suck, and they're really bad, and just they're the warm up. And so, but after that, I'd say I'd keep going for maybe an hour or 2 hours, but the cumulative number at the end is like 7, maybe 8, 10 hours at least, because when you're in it and just enjoying it on a good day, at least that's about what we get. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And as far as the last pieces that you were showing, we have a question from Dale. He's asking if you started those paintings in black and white or in one color.
No, these are all straight with color. I mean, what I like to do, although I'm curious lately, as of late, to start in black and white, and I want to switch over and try that for a while. But for example, I'll have a drawing, and then I'll what's it called? I'll establish some kind of color palette. Let's say we take this as our color palette. Say I was like, yeah, I like this one. Let's add some yellows, some of these, whatever. And when I go to the drawing, I'll set it to multiply or something, and kind of just let it chill here. But at the same time, if I'm going to paint this guy up, I'll sort of like paint that and let the values kind of mix in. And then when it goes to render, then I can start to really do the whole shading and stuff. But right now, what I like to do is establish color palettes and etc. Does that answer? I hope that answers your question.
Next question from LaQuisha.
Hmm.
What advice can you give to artists with huge egos that want to get to high road but don't take the time to improve their fundamentals?
As someone who has an extremely huge ego myself, this is something I'm working on personally as well. It's like, ego is truly the enemy, and there's a book on it called "Ego is the Enemy," and I highly recommend it. And it's, ego is this person, well, this identity inside you that's saying, I've got to be the best. I got to prove myself to be better than other people. Other people giving me advice is not acceptable, because then that means, it's like all these strange, awful justifications. And I've had students like this, and I couldn't get through to them, So in terms of advice, I'd say being really patient and understand that egos is a really, dealing with an ego is a personal thing rather than, just art, but rather if you're trying to help somebody who has that problem, you got to dig deep for that person and figure out what's causing that ego. And oftentimes it's like really early childhood issues. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because we all have it, but I'd say, understanding the situation and stepping outside of the scenario, so you can really get an analysis of how to go about it. But yeah, the number one goal is get rid of your own ego and surround yourself with people without egos, so that when they tear apart your work, you can tear apart their work, and it's a really beneficial thing for both sides.
Cool. Question from Silja.
Oh yeah, I know her. Okay.
Oh, she is asking, what artist inspires you the most right now?
Right now, oh god. So I've sort of cut myself off from influences lately, but I'd say the most recent artists, in the last 5 years or so, maybe. It's hard to say. It started with Craig Mullins and Ian McCaig, but even now, when I look at their work, it's still beautiful, but it doesn't have the same effect. So I'm slowly gravitating towards just not looking at any artists at all. It's really good to study like Sargent, John Singer Sargent, J.C. Leyendecker, all these things. But there comes to a point where you have enough technical skill where you don't need to look at these artists anymore and start exploring what's possible for you. And I think that no matter what, when you cut off your inspiration and you start doing work, it's eventually going to show your voice through it. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Question from M. How do you know when you're good enough, in quotes?
Well, yeah, I get that question a lot on YouTube as well. Well, this kind of goes back to ego, right? Because our ego doesn't want to hear that we're not good enough, because then that's emotional. But I think stepping outside of that and putting your work next to work that you think is quote unquote good enough, then you can sort of gauge what you need to work on. But at the same time, that could also be something detrimental and prevent you from working. And so I don't think there's a such thing as, am I good enough to be an artist? Everyone can be an artist. Everyone can learn. Everyone can get to a certain extent. But I wouldn't focus on it too much. I'd say if you're in a situation where you're asking yourself that question, I'd instead reframe the question and say, what technical skills do I need to improve upon so I can get to a level where it's that I myself would hire, right? So if you imagine your own self as a director, an art director, or somebody working in a company, whether it's a video game company, put yourself in their position. Then look at your work and say, would I hire this? And that's kind of one way to look at it. So that's my answer for that.
Awesome. From Fiona, where do you see your future career going?
I'm going to be honest. I'd say I want to leave art completely. I want to leave art completely and spend, I don't know, a year on a farm and just not do any of this. I don't know. It's a weird desire, but there's a point where I just want to just walk away. But I think, realistically speaking, because obviously I can't do that, maybe for a month or so. But realistically, I think I want to be telling my own stories and really develop my own, whether it's a graphic novel or IPs. And I'm actually working on a book with another publisher to kind of publish my art. And he was like, you have a lot of great art out there. It's really lovely. I'd love to, make a book with you. And I was like, oh, absolutely. And he had a successful Kickstarter with another artist. So there's definitely promise. But I was like, if I'm going to do this though, I want to make completely new art, all new stories, because everything I've done prior has been not really my soul. It's not my voice. It's been usually, oh, what can I draw to get likes on Instagram, or, oh, what does the client need? And so having those things in the equation really takes away from being able to do your best art. And so I want to explore, go on a farm, come back, do some art, and then make that book.
That sounds awesome, dude. I like that.
Appreciate it. You could come with me.
Oh, great. I would love to.
Yeah, there's actually a website called WOOF, which is Worldwide Association of Organic Farms. And basically you can look at a map of your area and see what farms are available. And basically you can go to any of them and say, hey, I'd like to stay for a week or two or a month or whatever. And they provide you with a place to stay, but you have to work 8 hours a day. Depending on the farm, of course. So that's
right.
Throwing that out there. Quick plug in for WOOF.
Man, I'm going to check that out after this.
I have a membership if you want to use it.
Sounds good. Question from Eddie. Hey, Ahmed, I just want to say you're a great inspiration. I'd like to pursue entertainment design in the near future. I've been drawing for all my life. Main question is, where are these awesome drawings, paintings applied? Are they inspiration for video games, movies, for animators to go off of?
Thanks, Eddie. I wish you the best of luck for whatever it is that you do. And this thing on screen, by the way, since we kind of stopped talking about the work, and I'll just talk about this one right here. The previous paintings were just kind of personal, but this is the first thing that I'm showing that was actually for a game. This was in Guild Wars 2. We had when I was over at ArenaNet, there were different themes for the season, right? So for the Halloween season, they wanted me to design a costume. So basically they gave me an idea. They're like, okay, well, think like, Halloween and Grim Reaper or something. I'm like, okay. So I gathered a bunch of reference of cool things and cool jack-o'-lantern faces and souls and lanterns and armor. And I wound up coming up with this. There's a couple different iterations that were failures before this. I wish I had those. But I took a break for like a couple of days, and I came back to it and whipped these out, and they loved it. Like, cool. And so it's actually it's in the game. If you look up the Halloween costume from 2015, 2015, and that was really fun. So yeah, this was specifically for a game, as well as this one. This is I think it's called the Slayer outfit in Guild Wars 2. Basically, in the game, you can download and buy MTX, which is microtransactions, and you can get weapons, weapon skins, character skins. And this one was supposed to be like kind of a barbaric berserker type character. So we have I referenced a lot of things from fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, and tribal cultural stuff. So like a lot of skulls, a lot of things hanging off. And also there's a male version and a female version on the left here. This is a really fun thing to do. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Cool. From Eddie again, he's curious on how you would apply your skills in the workplace.
It depends on the assignment. Because I've worked in different places for VFX for movies, I've worked for video games, and I've worked for theme parks, and all of them require a different process. But I think, let's say for this one, the skills that I would need, I'll just kind of sketch it out. So sketching skills, like you have to be able to sketch out your character, right? Whatever he might be doing. And then, damn it, that's all in one layer. And then research. Research is one of the most overlooked skills because this is what informs your design. And if you get hired to make armor sets for a game, you might just be like, okay, well, shoulder pads, and then you got the gauntlets and chainmail. But like, there's billions of those out there, right? And so to be original, you have to research and let whatever the research is influence your design. So that's a major skill that you have to sharpen. And then, technical skills in terms of color, light, texture indication. Sorry, my handwriting is really sloppy. And then rendering. So, and if you look at these pieces, they're not super rendered, right? If you zoom out, it's just enough to hand off to the 3D artist. Although actually I did an orthographic for this, so this doesn't count. But for the concept phase, like it's pretty loose, right? And I did have to make an orthographic. And what an orthographic means, it's like you have your character, have to do the front view in that pose, and then the side view in this pose. So that you have to like kind of draw everything out in detail. We didn't always have to do that, but for that one we did because we had to outsource it. So that's a pretty useful skill because you can also, if you're doing like props or weapons, you can do that for, vehicles. If you have a vehicle like this, but you hand it off to a 3D designer, you have to also show them what it looks like from the side view, front view, and then top down view. So that's how I would apply that skill for this thing. Yeah, everyone comes up with their own design process. Some people start more abstractly, and that's a whole different skill on its own. But as long as at the end you end up with useful content for the company project or whatever it is, or your own project, whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Question from Fadhel. Would you please explain your color palette and what is the most important thing we have to focus on to improve color?
Okay, so, and I've been meaning to dive into this a bit more, but I think in terms of color, the number one thing I can honestly say is that there's no easy way to do it. There's no shortcut, right? You can watch some of my tutorials that show like where I hold your hand and guide you through how to color something, but that'll never get you to understand it fully. And I think the only way to really for real do it is through observation and really just in real life have real objects that are red, green, blue, and see how they act and react in real light. And that is one of the most important things. And people and it's hard to do that for a lot of people because it takes effort, right? We always want somebody to just hold our hand and do it for us, but this is something that you have to do on your own. And of course it can be guided in a course, but at the same time, it's still got to be you who's understanding the information of what happens when a red light hits something green, and it loses all its color, that kind of stuff. But in terms of my color palettes, it's like I like to usually have 3 colors. So if look at this painting, we have orange, green, and sort of reddish glow around everything. And if we do a little palette over here, that you have a sort of harmony happening. And so if I'm doing this piece, I'm sort of letting this color palette kind of bleed into everything and emphasize it more in different areas. And of course, there's the black. But I think, these are coming up with palettes is, a skill on its own. And what I like to do, by the way, is collect a folder of pieces of artwork that I think are successfully executing color, and I'll reference those. But I think before you skip to something like that, I'd say do for real observation, things in front of you. And if you can, paint them with real paint, whether it's oil paint, acrylic, watercolor, because if you do that, I promise you, trust me, you will have such an augmented understanding of color and light, and it's much better than anything that I could ever teach you in a video.
Great. Do you believe in talent some people being naturally better at drawing than others?
Man, I don't know. I've heard this question. I've had debates about it. I still don't know where I stand on it because my dad always told me I had talent. Um, and he's like, and every time I bring up art, he's like, "Yeah, well, you're talented." I'm like, "No, I don't think so because I've been drawing since I was 2. That's a lot of mileage." And because my brother is also really good at drawing, but the moment he saw me get really good, he kind of quit. But he could have easily surpassed me. So call it talent, call it mileage. I don't know. It's I think certain things require uniqueness. For example, singing. Not everybody has a good tone, right? But everyone can learn to sing. Will everyone like your tone? No, So I think there's certain elements there. And with art, I think everybody could develop a skill. And one example I like to give is if you just open up a piece of paper or canvas and you sign your name, come on, autograph, right? I mean, this isn't my actual one. I kind of just BS'd it here. But if you do it, you have a natural way of doing it. You've done it so many times that you've kind of finessed it. Like, if your name's John, you have like a thing, right? And you've practiced it. You have very specific curves and motions. That's your style. That's your style showing up through mileage, right? And so if you apply that same understanding to learning how to draw or how to paint, you develop what people perceive to be talent. Nobody ever looks at an autograph and say, "Hey, you're really talented." I've heard like, "Oh, that's a cool autograph," and it's like, "Yeah, I've done this for millions of years." Obviously, not that much, but like, so I don't know. I don't have a definitive answer to that question just yet.
Okay. From Nicholas, what is it like to be a concept artist? Is it draining to come up with ideas?
Oh, it's fun. I mean, it's like being a concept artist. Well, I'll tell you what it's not. It's definitely not going into a studio and like doing speed paintings, right? Like we often get deterred in thinking that we're supposed to go in and like do these paintings of like, you got a scene, you got a foreground, a guy with a spear, you got mountains, and then you got spaceships. Like that's what like the kind of meme, that's the joke, of concept art. But really what it is, it's like you have an idea, a concept, and you get hired to come in. This is you, right? To use your skill set. So all the things I talked about, research, technical skills, color, light, etc. All those are your skills, and they'll say, "Okay, well, here's our concept. We need a story where something happens and like this thing crashes, and we need to know what the ship looks like. We need to know what the crash looks like. What kind of explosions are they? Is it blue explode? That kind of stuff." So that's the question, right? And that gets filtered through you, and before you deliver your final pieces of like your ideas and your sketches, which require good presentation skills to add to that, by the way, you have to filter that through your skill set, and through your skill set is research, willingness to discover unique ideas through ideation. That's like sketching out your ideas over and over again with new concepts and new possibilities, and that gets injected here and then there, and that's super fun because this part is really fun, and you find yourself exploring and finding things that you otherwise would not have thought of. Like you might have a character design prompt and you find yourself like on a Pinterest board of like really cool tribal African masks, and no one's painted those yet, right? And you start to inject that design language into your thing, and suddenly you've got this new thing that you're discovering, and that's what this is about. It's about discovery. It's not about, at least, I mean, for the good companies, right? Because some people will hire you just to like do copies of other existing work and changing it up a little bit. But the discovery process for, let's say, things that I did at ArenaNet was really fun because they allow you the creative space to do that, and then the results are like ta-da, and then everyone is all like, "Wow, let's put that in the game." So that's what it's like to be a concept artist. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah. I thought I disconnected. My bad.
No, it's okay. Sorry. From Fiona, uh, how did you go about developing your visual library, and what was your high school life like in terms of art?
I'll start with the high school question. I took art classes. It wasn't. I didn't learn much from teachers. I mean, I love them; they were great, but they didn't know what this industry had to offer, so it wasn't really good for this. But I mean, it was enough for me to realize I had to learn things on my own. So, what was the first part of the question?
The first part was how did you go about developing your visual library?
Right. Okay. So, and the perfect example, by the way, for visual library at its fullest is Kim Jung-gi. He's drawn so many things that he can make things up and rotate them in his head, and figure out what things look like from different angles. We actually had lunch with him when he was visiting ArenaNet, and he was explaining this to us, and it was pretty cool. But what I can say, I actually have a folder open. Collect things that you think are cool. Like let's say there's a fish, right? And just draw the heck out of it. Break it down into shapes, and then try to discover what makes it that thing and to its fullest. And like once you do that, like maybe you want to color it up or figure out what design elements in here that you like that you can incorporate in your work. Because like what I just did there, I could turn that into like a shoulder piece for an armor set, right? You put one on the other side and like, look, suddenly we have something, right? So I say for your mental library, collect things that you think are pertinent to your designs and draw them, and sort of like draw them over and over until like you get sick of it, so that you for real get it embedded into your library. And to add to that, I think it depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to do environments, like collect a library that's relevant to that. So, lighting in different times of the day, different seasons, and then you want to know what lighting looks like when there's only stars out or that kind of stuff. Also, what does the ground look like? Is it just dirt? Is it just rocks like every other concept art painting? Or are you going to do something unique? So collect very specific elements that you might think are unique, and then you inject them into your designs, and then suddenly you have your voice or your style. And then after that, I'd say draw them a lot, paint them, and to the point where you fill up a whole sketchbook of something, and by the time you're done with it, you're just so well versed in whatever that thing is that it becomes a joke. So I filled up a whole sketchbook of hands, and I could sort of just like whip up a hand in like a pretty much any configuration almost. I still struggle with like fists, but my mental library is augmented because I just drew this so many times, and you start to learn the shapes and the negative shapes, like what this looks like and how far the fingers actually are between each other. What are the tendons like? What's the actual form language of this? If I were to put a wireframe on it, they start to look like Spider-Man. But like, yeah, that's what I would say about mental library.
Awesome.
For real.
What is your favorite part of the creative process?
Oh man, the discovery. It's like you start here, and then here's the finished product. But somewhere along here is where you start to discover what the cool ideas are that you've never expected, or the world hasn't seen yet. And this is, I'd say, the magic, because like once you discover that and you start to refine it and you have your finished piece. But also my other favorite part is just collecting images, collecting reference and research. Like, oh, it could look like this. Oh, it could look like that. Oh, what if we did this, right? And then the ideation process here is like either it could go from like 2 hours to like 3 weeks, right? But when you finally get here, that's, I think, really rewarding.
That's awesome. From Adam, what do you think about Ross Tran's art? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Oh my God, why? It's funny, like he was a student of mine in a way. He went to art center with us. He got really good. He's very skilled. That's what I'll say.
Alrighty. How did you develop such a distinct style?
I can't wait to have a style. I don't know what you're talking about. I really don't. It's like I look at my stuff and I'm like, okay, generic. Okay, I don't see um, anything really special about my work. But I think to answer what my guess would be to discover a style, and I think it goes back to your autograph. It's like you've done it so much, your own little habits that happen around here, and like the curves do that. When you do it, those things become unique to you, and those things become your quote unquote style. And so when you draw a face like 1,000 times, and then you find yourself putting the eyes a very specific distance apart, and then the nose way up here and the mouth over here, that becomes your style, right? Because you find yourself doing that. Or maybe when you do it, you make your eyes really close together, and that becomes kind of pertinent to your style. And then it goes like, you're like coloring something, and you tend to shade really dark in the core shadow, and then put a hint of purple in the bounce light. That becomes your style. So I think it's a multitude of things, and it all comes from mileage. I don't think you can force it. I'd say style is pretty much your bad habits.
Do you think environment artists need to know less about anatomy than a character artist or designer, character designer?
So does an environment artist need to know anatomy less than a character artist?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, sure, but at the same time, I'd recommend any artist to try and get a decent mastery of all the aspects. I just had a student, he was doing an independent study with me, and he's really talented. I'm sorry, skilled. So he really wants to do environments, but when you look at his environments, they were like, let's pretend this is an environment. It's really well drawn, but the character was like, like just not very good, right? Very stiff, very like whatever. And so I was like, okay, all right, for the next 4 weeks, sorry, dude, but you're gonna practice characters. And so I had him pretty much what we'll be doing in the CGMA class. And so gestures, and like understanding the basic structural anatomy using shapes, and then being able to do that and pose it like a stick figure so that you can really tell your story a lot better. So if you want to do just environments in terms of matte paintings and like, oh, this is a tree here, this is a mountain there, yeah, you don't need characters. But if you want to do environments but also tell a story, go ahead and augment it with character anatomy.
What was your first inspiration that made you want to draw, that made you want to be an artist?
I'd say like Batman, and I could probably draw the first Batman that I would do like this shape, and then like that. Oh my God, I can't believe I remember this. Oh God.
That's awesome, dude.
I would draw that so much. So Batman, Power Rangers. That was my early inspiration in terms of entertainment. I think the earliest inspiration in terms of art is for sure. I think I don't know. I want to say Ian McCaig, but I didn't discover him until I got to Art Center. So it was probably comic book artists. So J. Scott Campbell, Joe Madureira, Adam Warren, who did this like kind of interesting, slightly off tune anime style, manga style. But yeah, a lot of PlayStation Magazine covers were really cool, because if you're familiar with PSM, PlayStation Magazine, they usually hired comic book artists for their covers, and like you flipped to like the third or fourth page, and they had the sketches of like 3 or 4 sketches that the artist did of like the Spider-Man character doing different things, which was pretty much ideation. And I was looking at those, they were tiny thumbnails. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. That's it. And so I'd say that's probably the earliest memory I have on that.
How did you feel about relocating to ArenaNet? Is relocating for an art job worth it, even if it may be expensive and leaving everything behind?
It was definitely worth it, because going to ArenaNet for me was, I knew I would go in so that I would learn. So I actually left a job that was paying almost double of what I was getting at ArenaNet. So it was an active choice to say, okay, I'm going to make way less money, but it's worth it because I'm going to learn. And in moving to a new place, going to Washington, Seattle, I liked it because although I still prefer LA, I think a new experience is always great. You can get those out of traveling, out of moving, relocating. So I'd say it was good. It was worth it. Yeah, and I just found like a cheap place at first and made it happen. It's like I was determined. Yeah.
Can you start drawing now and become good? And if so, how?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I don't know how old you are, but if you're 9 years old, if you're 50 years old, if you start anything, you can definitely get good, especially with guidance, especially with all the resources you have on the internet. And if you're in the area over here, you have a lot of workshops and classes, and you're around artists that you can learn from. But it all comes from mileage because if you go back to the signature thing, you first started your signature like I don't know, like something like this, and that's when I'm first learning, and now it's developed into something like that, right? But with drawing, your first face might be like something like this because you've learned the shapes or something, and but your proportions are really weird, right? But like just doing it over and over again, you start to see what's wrong with it, and then eventually by the time you get like a year in, you start to learn the nuances of what makes a decent proportion for a face, right? But that's like aspect of it. The other aspect is craftsmanship. Like maybe your lines look like scratchy and like not confident and whatever. I actually had a student earlier this term at Art Center who had a problem with perspective, and so like I would draw a box like this and say, okay, just whip up a box like that, and she had a really hard time. And she would go, like this, and like really try to do it, and it would be off in the end. Like it was bad, and you could see the difference, right? But I was like, okay, and I believe in mileage, right? So I grabbed an empty sketchbook and I was like, okay, fill this up with boxes just like this. I want to see different angles. I want to see them rotate in XYZ space, kind of like that stuff, and really converging verticals, try it in different lenses. And by the time, 4 weeks passed, she could start doing this very naturally. And so you have a focused practice where you're saying like, all right, I know I suck. I know I'm not the greatest at this thing right now, but I can see that other people have done this thing whether it's perspective or drawing figures, you start off with the bad. You have to embrace it. You have to just say, okay, I know that my characters look like this. All right, fine. Well, how can I get better? So then you start to go online and see different ways to do it. And you start off with like basics. And then by the time you're, a couple years in of active for real practice, I'm talking like 8 hours a day of just forcing yourself through the bad part, you can get good. And it's not for everybody though. I don't think everybody has the willpower to do it because we get distracted. Like if we're in this stage and we see amazing artwork out there, we're like, oh, it's not worth it. I'll never get there. But if I'm 28 and you're 10 years old, by the time you're 38, you could be way past where I am, right? Or if you're 50 years old, by the time you're 80, you'd still be really good. And it becomes a hobby, right? And so it comes with passion and dedication, of course. So yeah, it is possible. That's a long-winded answer, but there you go.
What is the hardest part in painting?
For me, the hardest part was finishing. Still have a hard time with that. I mean, I could come up with decent compositions and values and color and story, but I think taking it to a finish is the hardest part for me.
Okay. What kind of conversation do you recommend having with parents who constantly discourage you from continuing your art path? I'm in art college now, freshman, simply because of financial status.
If it's financial status, I understand, and I'm starting to like, even though I teach at art center, it's like it's getting way too expensive. When I started, it was like 14K. Now it's 20K, almost 21,000. So I'm like, how do you people afford this? I understand, and I'd say for you specifically, if you still want to pursue it, just know that you don't have to do art colleges. You could still learn from. I don't know if you want to relocate to LA, but there's so many schools here, like CGMA is online, of course, and then CDA. I'm sorry, uh, Brainstorm. Even like Art Center has workshops. So, what do you say to your parents? I think the best thing that you can do, because if you imagine that you're a parent and you're concerned for your kid, um, if you can find a way to make them feel confident that it is possible for you, um, and just show what's out there, and also show like progress. If there's any examples out there of somebody getting good really fast, let's say over the span of 3 months, uh, show them that that could be you too, and let them feel confident that it is possible, and give them a trial period. Be like, okay, let me try this for a year. Let me try this for 2 years. Um, and if I myself don't feel confident with my work, then we could have another conversation. But at least give yourself the chance, and let them give you the chance to fail, because you have to fail, right? I mean, I failed a lot before I was able to understand things. So just it's a tricky situation, but I'd say it is. That's my advice for that.
All right. From Funhel, I'm graduated from art college, working in a theme entertainment company. Would like to improve my design skills. Do you think industrial design college is the best way?
I'd say studying industrial design, yes. You don't have to go to college for it though. But and you can even teach yourself. But if you have the means and the time and the money, yeah, go for it. Because what you end up doing through industrial design and entertainment design at Art Center is industrial design, just focus on entertainment, at least for the concept track. You end up understanding the process of functionality, drawing through and figuring out the research and making sure this thing works. And if you're doing themed entertainment, I assume you mean theme parks. And I did that for a while too. So you have to know like what it takes to make something product worthy and ready to sell to a client. And if it's something that's not convincing because of the lack of industrial design understanding, then yeah, you'd be missing out.
Do you think Art Center is worth the money for the connections, for the
For
people
the connections,
the people in the
Alright.
industry that you could potentially make?
I'm going to say that unless you have a killer scholarship or you're like a millionaire, I'd say there's other better ways to get connections. And that's if you're in the area, like the same teachers like myself, John Park and all these people, they're teaching workshops that are, a fraction of the price. And if, for example, you're taking a class at Brainstorm, which I'll be teaching there as well, you are exposed to the teacher, and the teacher is also exposed to you and your work. And that is an automatic connection, right? Like you don't have to spend $200,000 like we did at Art Center at the time to be connected, right? So you will get connections if you go to Art Center. But me personally, if I was in the position of choosing an art school, I'd want to do it, but I wouldn't do it unless it was, if I had a lot of money or if I had a good scholarship.
Alrighty. I'm so sorry, guys. We're running out of time, so probably have time for just 2 more questions. I'm going to go with, what does the concept art industry feel like? Is it radically different type of environment compared to Art Center?
I'd say that Art Center over-prepares. Well, it used to over-prepare us. I think it's getting easier now, unfortunately. I'm going to try to change that. But I think the mentality is a really high standard of professionalism at Art Center, and being on time, making sure your work looks amazing on the wall, how it's presented, how you're dressed. Those are like the small things, but at the same time, And that's the over preparation, because when I got into the industry, which I mean, I already was, but when I left Art Center, it was a lot more lax and we had more time to do things. We weren't always crunching. So the environment at Art Center does a pretty good job of saying, hey, this is the worst extreme version of what could happen. And I know that if you're in the film industry, it actually is like that, with crazy turnarounds and directors yelling at you. But I think from what I've been in, it's been much more relaxed.
And this will be the last questions. Do people that went to art schools have the same chances as people who get self-taught with online classes? Is a certificate like some extra icing on the cake?
Let me put it this way. If your portfolio speaks for itself, you don't need a degree, you don't need a certificate, you don't need somebody to give you a letter of recommendation. If your portfolio says, hey, I can do the job you're looking for, that's all you need. However, at the same time, there are companies I've worked at when they were hiring students, or when they were hiring people, and on the resume it said Art Center. It definitely did help. Like, oh, the Art Center, they must be professional. Okay, let's give them an interview. So there's a few instances where it happens, but if your portfolio exceeds what the other portfolios are presenting anyway, then you don't need that, right? Because if you look at artists like Teo Prinz, who I worked with at ArenaNet, he didn't go to Art Center or art school. He just traveled the world and got really good, you know? And so, yeah, he's a great example of, like, you don't need a stamp of approval from a university or a school or anything really. But at the same time, if you do have some things on your resume, like, hey, I took classes from this thing, it does help to show that you're still willing to learn. So it's a I don't know, case by case scenario, I suppose. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, we've come to an end to this interview, and
Right.
I apologize we couldn't get to all of the questions, but Ahmed, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're a great inspiration, and what you do for the community is just priceless, man.
You're too kind, John. You're too kind.
I appreciate
By
it.
the way, let me just do a quick shout out. John, the person interviewing me, is an awesome person. I just saw. I went to school with him, and he's one of the coolest people I ever met. So I was really excited to see that you were doing the interview. I'm like, what, John? So, yeah, John.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you had a great time, and I wish you guys a great Sunday, wherever you guys are. Thank you, guys. I'll see you guys next time.